All right. Welcome to this week's Promo Kitchen Promo Chat Deep Dive. Join the conversation every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on Twitter, and follow the hashtag PromoChat. I've hijacked this meeting from Kate Plummer, who usually does them, because I was dying to get to know a little bit more about our special guest today, Glenna Fulks from Kite Meetings. She had some really great answers to this week's questions. So let's kickstart this with a little introduction and get to know Glenna.
Great.
So, Glenna, can you tell us a little bit about Kite Meetings and how you got into promo?
So Kite Meetings is a meeting planning agency that I created back in 2016. And I was in the process of transitioning out of corporate. I had been a corporate meeting planner in business, PricewaterhouseCoopers, before that, Coopers and Lybrand. And then I spent several years in pharmaceutical and medical devices with Johnson & Johnson. And my last corporate job, I was, believe it or not, I was with Advertising Specialty Institute. That was the entree, that was the entrance into this idea of, there's a whole promotional world out there. And it kind of completed the pieces of the puzzle. I'd been a meeting planner for so long. I had always sought and used branded promotional items as gifts for attendees or speakers' gifts, but I guess, had this cloudy vision of where did they come from. So once I worked at Advertising Specialty Institute, then that answer was concrete, and the trade show piece fell into place. And then there's a whole protocol, of how distributors, buy from suppliers and where the suppliers get their products. And it's really a fascinating kind of journey. But I transitioned out of the corporate world in 2016 so that I could come home to Ohio, to the very small town where I grew up, because my mother had asked me if I could come home and help her. She's not in great health, but she wanted to stay in her home as long as she could. And in order to do that, I needed to come home and help her. So I started a meeting planning agency to do what I've always done, and came home to give her a little bit of help where she needed it.
That's amazing. I love hearing how people get into the industry, and it sounds like it gave you the flexibility, but being a part of ASI sort of opened Pandora's box to this world that most people don't know exists until they fall into it, like we have.
Right. And Pandora's box is a great way to describe it. If you can imagine it, it exists somewhere. You just sometimes have to dig for it a little bit.
Yeah, it's like you sell everything. You can sell anything and everything, which is a blessing and a curse sometimes, because when you sell everything, how do you narrow in and get a niche market?
Right.
Or yeah. I wanted to ask you too, because in our brief chat, you mentioned one of your answers to the questions was it was advice. What advice would you give? And you said to always be learning. And you mentioned that you are doing your master's, and I thought that was so cool. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're studying and why you decided to go back?
So meeting planning is a bit of a double-sided coin. There's the meeting planner side of it, which is operations and logistics. Sometimes I especially dive into the strategy. I help my clients oftentimes. Are they looking for a theme? Or if they have a theme, then how are they going to develop that theme so that there is this overriding, continuous, overarching message throughout every component of the meeting or the conference or the event? So I will get involved when they ask for my help in finding the perfect keynote speaker, or suggesting content or breakouts, so that their theme and their branding and their messaging just hits and hits and hits again, so that everything connects. And the other side of the coin is the hotel or the convention center side of it. They are selling to meeting planners like myself, but the selling comes with a caveat, and that is your meeting a good fit? Does it bring optimal revenue? Does it maximize revenue potential to the hotel? And hotels and convention centers basically sit down every morning with brand new RFPs they have received from meeting planners to go through business review. It in my mind, it probably looks like a giant poker game, and they're, instead of cards, they're holding RFPs. And so they're throwing out, well, here's an opportunity from this meeting planner, this date, this many rooms, this much food and beverage. And so they whittle down and figure out who they're going to offer and make a proposal to. That's the other side of the coin. Sometimes it's difficult to explain to a client. A hotel declined to propose. They declined to make you an offer for space, dates, and rates. Well, why? Well, could be for any number of reasons. Not enough food and beverage, rooms to space ratio is off. So there is a Master's of Science program that is being offered by the University of Southern California. And I applied. And in fact, this morning I had a conversation with my academic advisor who asked me the question, you're the complete other side of the coin. What do you want to get out of this? And it is, I want to be a well-rounded meeting planner. I want to be the answer to everything my client could potentially ask so that I can guide them, direct them more appropriately. And one of the things that I often tell groups is you always want to be the biggest fish in the pond. You never, ever want to be the guppy in the ocean. So if you're a small group, you're a 15 or 20 person board meeting, and you go to this huge convention hotel where they put you in the last available meeting room at the end of the hall because they're maxed out with a huge convention, how much of a priority is your meeting? If you're a 20 person meeting and you go to a small, exclusive, high touch point retreat that has a total of 24 rooms, you are now the whale in the pond instead of the guppy in the ocean.
Wow, I love that analogy. I love that analogy and the idea of the poker table with all these RFQs. That's a really interesting perspective. And what a like blast of fresh air you are and will be with all this education to back it. That's really
cool. Yes, hopefully.
Okay, so let's go into some of those questions that we wanted to dive a little deeper into. The first one was, what are you seeing right now? Is business booming, or are you experiencing the calm before the storm?
That's the answer to both of those questions is yes. Business is starting to boom based on what we've experienced in the last 16 months. Unless you were selling, masks and surgical gowns and surgical gloves, which I think, by the way, is like eating the same meal every single day for the last 16 months. At some point you get tired of eating that. But business is really beginning to come back based on the amount of proposals that I've been writing for clients who are coming to me. And they're saying, well, we've got a meeting already booked. We've got the meeting space planned. What we really need help with are the giveaways and the gifts. I've got a couple of incentive programs that I have proposed on to say, here's our special gifts that I'm able to, get for you and bring to you so that, your meeting is as special as possible. But we are the calm before the storm because it's going to get a lot crazier. And at the same time, we're already booming, given where we have been. Third quarter is going to be busy. Fourth quarter is going to be even busier. But both of those are pretty much laying the groundwork for what comes first quarter of 2022. I think that's when we really, burn the tread off the tires and squeal around the corners. So
you had mentioned too, talking about companies who are hiring more and how that's an opportunity for more welcome kits and just so many opportunities for branded items.
Yes, I have a company that I have been working with for about 3 years now, from the time they had their very first users conference. And last year they canceled their conference, but they hosted a virtual conference. So every attendee and every speaker received a box, and the box was branded. Every inch of space on that box was branded with their logo, their hashtag, and a message on the inside of the lid. And then it was filled with all of the goodies that they would have received at a live meeting. And a couple of extra things, because this was a virtual event. One of the things that went in the box was a door hanger to remind everybody that they were behind closed doors. They were at a virtual conference, proceed with caution, please be quiet. And this year, that company they told me at the beginning of the year that it was their goal to hire 40 people, 40 new people. And I believe it because I'm sending out about 5 new hire swag bags every week. And of course, every one of those new hires potentially becomes, when the company does return to having a live meeting, all of those new hires will now be employees in the seats at that meeting. So it's definitely coming back, but it's building. I like to say it's like an oil catter who went down to Texas and is drilling for oil. It's there. You can almost smell it and you're going to hit it. So
I think a lot of us feel that way right now.
Yeah.
And then another question that you had a great answer to was if we're moving too fast. So it sounds like you're pacing yourself. Sounds like your companies might be pacing themselves. What do you think?
I think so. I think all companies are getting ready for, what's going to happen. From my perspective, when clients are saying to me, where should we be meeting? There are clients and there are companies who are mindful of the fact that their employees, as well as their attendees, are still a little timid to get too far out of the comfort zone. Not everybody is ready to jump on a plane and go to Los Angeles or Las Vegas. There are going to be companies that do. They're going to lead the charge. And I believe that before big meetings come back, trade shows are going to come back. Trade shows will prove to everybody that we can safely do this. We can safely travel. The hotels are perfectly safe, and we can be in these large convention spaces, with security, knowing that we're all safe and secure. But for meetings, I'm saying, okay, make it regional. If you're in the Columbus, Ohio market, maybe you want to go to Cincinnati. Maybe you want to go to Cleveland. I have one company that said, can we go out of state but not venture too far? And I said, well, why don't we look at Chicago, and why don't we organize transportation on a big coach? So, everybody gets on the coach, they sit down, you can show videos, you can basically do networking on the bus. You can have a breakout.
That's an amazing idea. You've got their audience captured. They have nowhere to go.
They are. I mean, they are a captive audience. And so, everybody above your head, in the seat, everybody's got a drop down screen, where we proposed an idea of a video storyboard of, here's what we propose for a kickoff video, so that everybody watches it. They're ready. It's a 5-hour bus trip. You roll into Chicago, you pull up in front of the hotel, you get out, you go in, you're registered, name badge, and you're off to the races. You're not that far from home. Nobody got on a plane. Everybody feels safe and secure.
What a great idea. That's awesome. So I hope to see a lot more hybrids of meetings and different ways that people are doing things instead of going back to the old way.
Hybrids aren't going away. I mean, there are going to be people. We have proven that you don't ever have to go to another meeting if you don't want to. People by nature are social. Most people are social, and most people enjoy some level of face-to-face interactivity and networking. But for those that don't, or for those who have some reason that they really can't leave home, hybrid, the virtual, the live streaming has proven that we can bring this element into the event, and it works just fine. So I think it's here to stay.
It makes it more accessible. So
it really does.
And another question that you answered, the question that we asked was, what advice would you give to somebody that's new to our industry or trying to get into it?
Education. And there are so many avenues for education. I mean, just getting on the Wednesday afternoon promo chat. I was on there for months, and I would just sit and read. I would read the questions. I would read the answers. there are certain companies that are always going to come through with something clever and funny and witty and memorable. But I sat there for a long time and observed before I finally decided that it was safe, or that I could, with some degree of confidence, I could begin to comment. But the ASI show in Chicago is going to have a lot of great education. They always put on a spectacular, one-day education program. They have great speakers. Don't be afraid. You don't need a life jacket. You're perfectly safe. Jump in. Nobody's going to let you drown. And there's always people to answer your questions. Hopefully, PPAI will be live and in person this year. More great education. And the magazines, ASI, PPAI, everybody has magazines, whether they're still print or whether they're digital. But again, just awesome articles, jam-packed full of facts and data and information. And if nothing, just ASI is going to have the live stream counselor awards this year. That's where you sit, these are the names of promotional products, whether it's the 40 top distributors, the 40 top suppliers, counselor person of the year. That's where you learn who the players and the movers and the shakers are, that when you then get on the show floor, you run into them and you introduce yourself. So there's so much out there. I can't name it all, but just start anywhere. There is no inappropriate place to begin.
That's awesome. Just be brave and go for it.
Yeah.
And then finally, our last question for you, because I loved your answer to this as well. And with so many people coming and going in companies, with company culture, how do you keep it consistent?
Know your North Star. When I sat down and created Kite Meetings, I had a vision. The name of my company is Kite Meetings because my grandmother's name was Ethel Kite. She was an only child. And I thought it was fascinating as a small child that her maiden name was Kite. And I asked her one time, how do you spell kite? And she said, just like the toy, just like the kite, you go out and fly. And then I began to realize when I thought about kites and meetings, if you know how to maneuver and manipulate a kite, you go out and you launch it into the wind, and you play with it and you give it some lead string, and you can take that kite higher and farther than you ever thought it was possible to go if you know what you're doing. If you have practiced and you have some ability to go out and fly a kite. And the same is true for meetings. You can get more return on engagement and return on investment than you probably ever thought possible if you know how to plan and you have a strategic agenda of how you're going to roll out your content and how you're going to deliver things to your attendees and what you hope to get back. And guide from your North Star. Think about what you put into place when you formed your company and you created your business plan. And as you bring people on and hire more people, just make them aware. Here's who we are. Here's why this company exists. This is what everybody's got a credo, and you pass it along to those new employees, and hopefully they embrace it and take your message and go forth. So you just keep guiding off of what has always been there in the beginning.
Wow, I have so much respect for Kite Media now. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing all your great insight and your answers to questions and your advice. We hope to have you next week at Promo Chat so everybody else can come and get to know you as well.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's been fun.
All right. Thank you.
All right.